How you doing? I'm Darren with Ash Kickin' Barbecue, and today we're talking picanha. Now, if you've never cooked picanha before, it's absolutely delicious. Ribeye is referred to as the king of steaks. Picanha is referred to as the queen. It's super easy to cook. It's amazingly tender, amazingly beefy, and amazingly delicious. So let's bring you in and show you how we're gonna prep this picanha. All right, so this is our picanha. It's absolutely beautiful. And you can see it has a big fat cap on it. You want to leave this on. You want to eat this fat when you cook it because it's absolutely delicious. It gives it a wonderful flavor. And you can cook this picanha whole as is and reverse sear it that way. I don't really prefer to do that just because you have two different ends of thickness. So this is usually going to get overdone. This will usually be right on the money where you want it. And you can also cut it into steaks and throw it on a skewer, which is more of the Brazilian steakhouse type of deal. I'm not a huge fan of that either. What I like to do is I like to cut these into steaks and reverse sear them, which is what we're going to be doing today out on the Pit Boss Pro Series 1600. We're going to be running Cookinpellets Longhorn blend pellets for our flavor, and we're going to be smoking these at 225 degrees until they hit about 115, 120 degrees, and then we're going to sear them off quick and get a nice crust on them. So what I like to do is when you go ahead and slice these into steaks, you want to figure out which way your grain is running. And if you look here, you can see kind of separate it. Your grain is running this way. Now you want to slice your steaks with the grain, so when you go to cut them to eat, you're slicing against the grain, giving you your most tender chew. So what I would recommend doing is finding your grain and then going ahead and just start slicing your steaks. Now, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start over on this side and just kind of get myself a starting point here. So this one's going to be a little bit thinner. We're just going to go ahead and slice through it there. And you can see there, running with the grain, and then when we go to slice it, it's going to be against the grain, giving you a very tender chew. So now that we kind of have a reference point here, you can see it's nicely got some nice marbling in there. It's so tender. And we're going to go ahead and just slice this up and get a few more steaks out. I think it's about time that I sharpen my knife here. But look at that. That is absolutely beautiful. And there we go. There are all our picanha steaks. These look absolutely awesome. And how I like to season these is I keep them very, very simple. I just used kosher salt. Now in Brazil, they use a rock salt. I don't have any of that. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and transfer these over to a rack. And that's looking good. And then ideally you would want to do this the night before. We're just using kosher salt here. This is Diamond Crystal kosher salt. You can use Morton, you can use whatever you want. Just don't use table salt, don't use iodized salt. Use a good kosher salt, whatever your preference is. And you would like to do this typically the night before so it can dry brine overnight. I don't have that option today. So I'm just going to let this dry brine in the fridge for a few hours before we go ahead and cook it up. So this is the only seasoning we're using, so don't be afraid of it. This is going to start to penetrate down into the meat and kind of season the meat throughout, and it's going to be absolutely delicious. So you can see there, we got it seasoned up. We're going to repeat the process on the other side. Flip it over, come in with our kosher salt. Don't be afraid. We want the steaks to be seasoned completely throughout, and that's where you get the benefit of doing an overnight dry brine. But I know from experience that these are still going to be delicious with a couple hours in the refrigerator just soaking in this salt. And it may look like I'm using a lot of salt, but because this is a coarser salt, it's really not that much salt on there. It just looks like it because it's coarser and thicker. All right, and there is our seasoned picanha. And we're going to go ahead and get this in the refrigerator for 2-3 hours, and I'll bring you back when it's time to cook it. So we'll see you then. Okay guys, so we have let these picanha steaks dry brine in the refrigerator for about 3 hours. You can see they're nice and bright red. You know, all the salt is soaked in. That's kind of what you're looking for right here. Now, if you'd have left these in the fridge overnight, this would have dried out and it would just be kind of white on the fat here and stuff. But this really does look wonderful, and I mean, look how tender this is. And I pulled them out and let them sit out for about an hour just to come up to room temperature, just to bring them up slowly, make sure we don't overcook them. So at this point, they're looking really good. We have the Pit Boss Pro Series 1600 fired up at 225 degrees, loaded up with Cookinpellets Longhorn blend pellets. We're going to go ahead and get these out on the smoker, let them just kind of come up to about 80 degrees. Then we're going to flip them over and give the other side some love. Let them come up to about 115, 120 degrees, and then we're gonna sear them off. So I'll meet you outside at the cooker. All right guys, so you can see we have our picanha steaks out on the smoker here. They're looking awesome. I do have a probe in here on my ThermoWorks smoke. I have the new needle probe from ThermoWorks in there. This thing is awesome. It's super low profile, waterproof. If you're interested in one of those, I'll have a link down below for that. So I do have the high alarm set for 80 degrees, so I'll be able to monitor it from inside. Once it hits 80 degrees, my alarm will go off. I'll come over and I'll flip them over. So we're just gonna let these smoke until then and be out here once it hits 80 degrees. We're sitting at 55 degrees right now, so I'll bring you back once it hits 80 degrees and let you know how long it's been. We'll see you then. Alright guys, so it has been about 15 minutes and my alarm just went off. We are reading at 80 degrees internally, so we're going to come on in and just flip these over. Let the tops get a little loving too here. Get those in, get it closed up. And we'll be back when these hit about 115, 120 degrees internally, and then we'll sear them off. So I'll bring you back at that time and let you know how long it's been. All right guys, so it's been about another 15 minutes and we are registering at 120 degrees. You can see this picanha is looking wonderful. This fat's looking really nice and juicy. So all we're gonna do now is we're just gonna go ahead and get these off in an aluminum pan. Get these set off to the side, and I'm going to crank up the temp on this cooker. We're going to get it up to about 400, 450 degrees and sear these off. So I'll bring you back when it's time to sear them. All right guys, you can see we got the flames going here on our sear station. So we're just going to go ahead and get these picanha steaks on. Just let them get a nice good sear on them. Just let them kind of do their thing. We're not really cooking them, we're just looking to get a nice crust on them, so we'll go ahead and leave the lid open and just let these bad boys sear for a little while. Alright, and just so we don't overcook one side, you can see we got a really nice color on these right here. We're going to go ahead and flip them. We're just going to get the other side starting to get a sear on it. Now you want to be careful when you're searing this fat because you will get some flame ups going. So if you're worried about getting burned, get yourself some longer tongs. Look at that juice on there, just dripping. That is looking so good right there. Alright guys, and there's our picanha. It looks absolutely wonderful. It smells delicious. I'm going to get these inside and let them rest, and I'll meet you inside for the taste test here in about 10-15 minutes. Alright guys, so here's our wonderful picanha. Look at that juice dripping. These smell wonderful. The smoke flavor and the smoke odor coming off of these from the Cookinpellets Longhorn blend is absolutely amazing. We got a nice little bit of char on here. This was a pretty quick cook. I mean, we reverse seared these, so we smoked them at 225 degrees for about 30 minutes. Remember, we left them out at room temperature to let them come up to temp, so it wasn't a super long cook. Took about half hour, and then we just seared them off until we had a good crust, and hopefully we'll slice into them and they won't be too overdone. I have a feeling they might be a little bit more than medium rare, which is what I prefer, but I'm feeding other people here, and they like things a little bit more done than medium rare. I'm not going to say well done because they don't like it well done, but gotta appease the masses. So we're going to slice into it and see how we did. I'll go ahead and set these off to the side here, and I think we'll jump into this guy here. Now remember, when we went ahead and sliced these for steaks, we cut with the grain, and now our final cut will be against the grain, and that's what's going to give us our chew. And yet we're a little bit more done here. I'd say we're more medium than medium rare, but that's the nice thing about picanha is you can take it a little bit further and it's still going to be really juicy. I mean, as the board shows, as this shows, I mean, there's just juice pouring off of here. But that's the nice thing about it as opposed to like other cuts like a New York strip. I mean, you take that thing a little too far, it's not going to be juicy, it's going to be tough. I know for a fact that this is going to be tender and delicious. Even though it's a little bit more than what I like, there's still some pink in there, so can't complain too much. So I'm going to break off a little piece here. And you have to make sure you eat the fat with this. There's so much flavor in this fat. It's absolutely wonderful. Still nice and juicy. I mean, look at that. So Cheers. That is absolutely delicious. It's super beefy, it's super tender, it's super juicy. I absolutely love picanha, and that's the reason right there. The flavor is unlike anything else that I've ever had. I mean, I love a ribeye steak, but picanha is right up there. Man, it is so good. I'm going in for another slice right here. Oh yeah, that is just so juicy. It looks absolutely amazing. All right, guys. So the flavor that's coming through, remember, we just seasoned this with kosher salt. An overnight brine is ideal. This was 3 hours, and the flavor is there. You don't need anything else with picanha other than kosher salt or rock salt, and the flavor is absolutely awesome. That salt has penetrated down into the meat. You got flavor almost throughout it, but you get that beefy flavor that just packs a punch. The smoke from the Cookinpellets Longhorn blend, out of this world with this beef. It's absolutely awesome. I cannot express enough how much I love picanha. It is just so good. It brings a smile to my face. It's so good. I mean, this is, as far as I'm concerned, some of the best eating you can get right here. If you haven't tried picanha, absolutely give it a whirl. So guys, I'm having me another bite. This beef is absolutely delicious. I highly recommend you picking up some picanha and giving it a try for yourself. You will not be disappointed if you're a steak lover such as myself. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and we will see you next time.